I've got to choose.
What's good, everybody? I recently started up a second YouTube channel about movies, so if this video interests you, then please go check that out. I actually dropped part 1 of this video series over there, where I covered some more mainstream artists like Jay-Z, Kanye West, Eminem, Kendrick, and a bunch more, but you know I had to keep it underground over here. So without further ado, here are 10 underground and old school rappers and their film director equivalents. First up, we have 2 of the most respected artists ever, Akira Kurosawa and Ka. These are 2 master storytellers who are known for being perfectionists with their craft. They even tell stories in the same way. They take their time, letting each scene and line happen naturally. Every frame is as perfect as a painting in a Kurosawa film, just like how every line of a Ka song could be a poem in itself. One of Ka's best albums is Honor Killed the Samurai, and it could be the soundtrack for any number of Kurosawa's samurai films. Thematically, their art deals with the morality of man, life, death, and so much more, so these 2 are a perfect match. Next up, we have a rapper and director who without a doubt must be on this list, MF Doom and Quentin Tarantino. These are 2 of my favorite artists ever, and they each occupy a similar space in terms of being 2 of the most respected by critics, their peers, and by fans. They both sort of act as a gateway drug for fans to dive deeper into becoming a cinephile or a hip-hop head. The art that both these guys make are filled with references, to the point that Doom's whole persona is a reference to Dr. Doom from Marvel Comics, and Tarantino has whole movies that are references to subgenres of the past. But even though they borrow much of their imagery from artists before them, they have 2 of the most distinctive styles around, and they each spawned a handful of copycats inspired by them as well. Their music and movies combine humor with a hyper-colorful, almost cartoonish style at times. And while their personalities are very different from one another, Doom once said on a track that he flips scripts like Tarantino, so even he agrees with the pick.
Villanova flip scripts like Tarantino.
Next up, we have a couple more of my personal favorites, Al Divino and Ralph Bakshi. These artists each tell stories of street life, with this drugged-out cartoonishness. If you watch any Bakshi movies, they are animated with the same wild and unhinged energy that Divino raps with. Divino produces, raps, and does the cover art for most of his records, just like how Bakshi is writing, directing, and animating. Al Divino is also a graffiti artist and painter, and his art style fits right in with Ralph Bakshi's. When I interviewed Divino for Def magazine, we went on a 5-minute tangent that I couldn't even fit in the interview, but he was raving about how he was inspired by all of Bakshi's films. I know Ralph Bakshi is semi-retired, but I'm putting this out there in the universe while I can. If anyone out there is listening who can put this together, please let Al Divino and Ralph Bakshi make a music video or a short film together or something. Thank you. Next up, we have Kool Keith and John Carpenter, the 2 kings of cult. These guys have been blending sci-fi with horror in their work for 40 years. I'm not sure if there's such a thing as a genre rapper, but if there was, then it would be Kool Keith. With each project, he dons a new persona to shed a light on a new world that he has created. Most of them feel like they live within the world of a John Carpenter film. Dr. Octagon is from Jupiter, but he could have easily appeared in Carpenter's Ghost of Mars. Dr. Doom was on a mission to kill Dr. Octagon, just like how Halloween's Dr. Loomis was on a mission to stop Michael Myers. And Keith's Black Elvis was a space-traveling version of, well, Carpenter's Elvis. These 2 never stepped away from their roles as genre geniuses to give us just a regular album or drama. They camped out in these 2 weird corners of their art and became 2 of the best at what they do. Their most iconic work came out of the 80s and 90s, and they each go on around a 15-year span where almost every single project they've put out has become a cult classic. To the public, Keith may be overshadowed by MF Doom, and Carpenter may never be on the level of the movie brats, but if you ever meet someone whose favorite rapper is Kool Keith, or favorite filmmaker is John Carpenter, then it's always a sign that you're with someone with great taste. Next up, we have 2 more of the best to ever do it, Blue and Paul Thomas Anderson. They are 2 California natives, born and raised in Los Angeles, with multiple homages to LA under their belt, from Boogie Nights and Licorice Pizza to The Blueprint, Good to Be Home, and a long red-hot Los Angeles summer night. But even though they're both masters at capturing that sunny California feeling, these are 2 of the more versatile artists working today. PTA has made historical epics, period piece dramas, comedies, detective stories, and more. And blues music can range from jazz, to gangster, to socially conscious, to romantic, which is the main point where these two meet. They each made their classic early on with Boogie Nights and Below the Heavens. In a few years and a couple projects after that, they each slowed down to tell a smaller story about love. Punch Drunk Love and Her Favorite Color are linked in so many ways. Both are made with such a romantic worldview, but with a sense of anger underneath it, making them out to be two of the more human love stories in modern culture. These projects are so linked that Blue even samples Punch Drunk Love in the very first song, guiding the listener to visualize the film throughout the album's runtime. Next up, we have two of the best writers of our time, Billy Woods and Charlie Kaufman. In hip-hop and the film industry, there was so much stock putting into making art that appeals to the masses. Well, these two make art that is so personal to them that they might have the most singular voices in their fields. Their work is so uniquely theirs and cannot be duplicated, weaving complex stories, blending philosophy with psychology, and looking at the world through an intellectual's existentialism. I don't know if the specific projects they've made line up one-to-one, but their collaborative partnerships mirror each other in a way. Billy Woods got his start with Supercraw and Fight Brothers, and similar to Kaufman's early partnership with Spike Jonze, their partners were able to filter their bold visions to make a product that was just as out there, but just a little more accessible to the public. And Billy's work with Armand Hammer reflects Kaufman's work with Michel Gondry, two pairs of odd geniuses, combining their skills to make possibly the best work of their careers. And then when Billy and Kaufman are working solo, their full, uncompromised artistic visions are on display, and that may alienate some new fans, but it really is what makes them two of the best artists working today. Next up, we have Jay Electronica and M. Night Shyamalan. Depending on your opinion of these two, they're either two of the most talented and exciting artists of the past 20 years, or they're two of the artists with the biggest wasted potentials of anybody. They both burst on the scene with some of the most exciting filmmaking and rapping in history, with The Sixth Sense and Jay's Eternal Sunshine. They were able to take the tropes of what artists in their mediums had been doing for years, and give it a brand new spin, with Shyamalan's twists and J.L.'s almost mythical approach to rapping. Immediately they were championed as the future, the next Spielberg, the next Jay-Z, and for a few years they lived up to that, from Unbreakable and Signs to Exhibit C and Jay's first few mixtapes. But then they didn't quite live up to their potential, and public perception of them changed. M. Night went through about a decade making movies that most people hated. He was lost in trying to find his voice as a filmmaker, and J.L. went through that same decade span, releasing almost nothing during that time out of fear. But luckily over the past few years, they both have their confidence back, and have settled into the artists that they're supposed to be. Shyamalan is meant to be a great horror director, putting out a reliable great time at the movies every couple years, and Jay is just meant to be a super dope lyrical MC. Up next, we're taking it back to the old school, with Slick Rick and John Ford. Now it looks like these two guys are only matched up because they each wear eye patches, and you know what? That is a piece of it. What are the chances that one of the greatest rappers and one of the best filmmakers ever wore an eye patch for most of their career? But beyond that, there are a lot of similarities between their art as well. These dudes were two of the first to really master storytelling in their mediums. Rick with his long-form storybook-like tales, and Ford with his larger-than-life westerns. Ford was definitely much more prolific than Rick, directing over 100 films over the course of his career, but if you look at only their classics, then I think there's enough here to link them together. Next up, we're taking it back even farther, to two of the OGs, Ice-T and Charlie Chaplin. Now I know what it looks like, I'm just putting these two guys together because of their older status, but they actually have a lot in common. They both showed up in the early days of film and hip-hop, when the art forms were still becoming mastered. They each helped build what the mediums would become by making art that blended social commentary with something that could be enjoyed by the masses. They both portrayed life from a lower-class perspective, making catchy songs and funny movies, but detailing the real-life trials and tribulations of life in poverty. Neither of them were ever afraid to make a political statement in their art either, with Ice-T's work calling out the racial issues in America, and Chaplin ending a few of his movies with long monologues criticizing modern society. Ice-T was also known early on for his song Cop Killer, and most of Chaplin's early shorts ended with him throwing bricks at cops' heads, so he had that same anti-cop messaging for a while. But even though Ice-T was the cop killer, he ended up changing sides and playing a cop on TV for 20 years, and Chaplin did the same with his 1916 short called Police. Next up is another one that just makes too much sense, Necro and Rob Zombie. If you've listened to any Necro music and seen any Rob Zombie movie, then this shouldn't really be a surprise. These dudes make music with the same energy and for the same people. I even think that Necro's music would be a perfect soundtrack for Rob's movies. They both are huge horror fans, with images from the genre permeating through most of Necro's music, and it has the same fuck you energy as Rob Zombie's films do. Their music and movies make me feel the same exact way. At times I'm like, this is the coolest shit I've ever seen, but at times it can also be very off-putting. They never shy away from showing or telling you the most depraved shit. There's an over-the-top misogyny present in their music and films that sometimes feels like parody, and sometimes just feels hateful. The music and films that both these guys make can be off-putting to a lot of people, but there's no denying that they're two talented guys with full creative control of their art. Necro raps and produces, and Rob Zombie writes and directs, and they've each carved out a lane where they're able to pretty much make whatever they want, and fans will always support. Thanks for watching, everybody. As I said earlier, if you're into movies at all, make sure to go check out my new channel, Def Gold Film. Part 1 of this video series is already live over there. If there's any other rapper, director comparisons that you think of, make sure to drop those down in the comments. As always, I want to give a special thank you to my patrons, and as always, I got a lot more headed your way, so stay tuned, stay safe, and stay def. Thanks for watching.